Good morning. This is Tobias Roach with Jeff Thomas. This is Justice Then, Justice Now podcast. Today we have the pleasure of having John Murray here on the podcast. Full disclosure, I've known John since 1989. We worked together at Customs, and we had the wonderful pleasure of working together 30 years later for the National Hockey League, as he's a senior representative and I was the junior representative in the NHL, and we at the games in Sunrise, and we were able to go to the Stanley Cup, which was a real thrill for me. And thanks to John, I'll always be grateful for that, to do that. He's going to talk about that job that he had for 30 years. But the main focus today is going to be on his career. John is retired from the New York City Police Department. He's retired from the U.S. Customs Service, and now he's spoiling his dog at home on a daily basis. So. The subjects we're going to talk about are a lot of things. He's going to be back for other sessions, one on gambling, which he's very knowledgeable on. And we have another individual who actually went to jail and was indicted on gambling. So it should be very interesting to the viewers. The persons that John has encountered are some unique individuals you'll hear about in the course, and he'll talk about the cases, groundbreaking cases and investigations that occurred in his tenure with the New York City Police Department and with the U.S. Customs Service. John, it's great to see you.
Good to be here, and good to see you guys.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Jeff.
You too. Likewise.
I wonder if you could tell us your background for the benefit of the viewers, where you grew up, what got you into police work? That's usually the most popular question.
Well, I grew up in the South Bronx, right by the Triborough Bridge, and I always wanted to be in the police department. There was no other goals I had. When I graduated high school, we just waited until my age was 21, and then I entered the police department. And that's where I wanted to go from day one. And believe me, I loved it, and I wish I could do it over. I went to patrol when I was appointed, I went to patrol in the 10th precinct, which is like Chelsea section of Manhattan. And then from there, I was fortunate to get an assignment to the Police Commissioner's Confidential Investigating Unit. And from there on, it's been great. Became a detective and involved in other agencies, and it was a great career. It was 22 years, and I left. Only reason I left is because the president of John Jay College in New York of Criminal Justice asked me to take over the training program at John Jay College, and that's the reason I left. Otherwise, I would have been there still there, if I could have stayed.
They'd have to carry you out, right?
Yeah,
the job. Yeah. Okay, that's a compliment in the law enforcement circles. Can you tell us about what it was like when you started, and how all the training you received the first week, and how did they bring an entry level person right out of the academy on the job?
Well, I was doing a late tour, and when I came off the late tour, the desk officer, who at that time was Barney McMahon, he's a lieutenant, he was wanting to know if I had any clerical experience. And I said, oh, yes, I worked in Union Carbide for a while. So he asked me, could I stay over and form a method of search for a lot of the cops that are going to be temporarily assigned there because we have a missing kid in the neighborhood. So I sat down at the desk and I wrote, and I had blocks written up, and and then I got the names of the cops and who was assigned to what block. And they searched. And during that search, one cop discovered the mutilated body and rape of a young girl named Edith Kaikorius. It was terrible. He came into the precinct my room where I was the clerical was right behind the desk officer, and he was very upset. And we spoke. We talked to him a bit. And at the meantime, what was happening at this time at police headquarters was a great celebration because there was going to be a new chief inspector, a new chief of detectives, and all that was taking place. And in the meantime, at the 10th precinct, all the press was gathering because the body was discovered. So I figured this is going to be a madhouse today. And I had a little thing typed up and ready to go in case somebody needed it. So up comes the new chief of detectives, and he comes in and he's a little bit sweaty and nervous, of course. He comes in and we talk to him. He meets with the cop that discovered the body, who was still very upset. And I gave him a little thing what to say. He went out in front of the desk and he spoke to all the press. And apparently it was a good presentation, and he was very pleased with it, because about 4 hours later, when he was leaving and he was going out the door, he stopped and he turned around and he said to the lieutenant, "Hey, Lou, you and that guy over there, meaning me, be at my office tomorrow at 9 o'clock. And that was the beginning. Was that luck or not? I mean, it's a shame the way it happened. Otherwise, I probably would have went right through patrol for 20 years. And that from there, I assigned to the Police Commissioner's Confidential Investigating Unit, which was basically a unit that did gambling investigations. And that's the beginning of my career.
So how long were you on the job, John, when this happened?
Oh, I think about a year and a half.
Okay.
Maybe 2 years. I'm not sure. Maybe 2 years. But that job, and I remember I was there, I was a clerical person, and I didn't like that, but I took it because it was a nice job, and it was down in headquarters. And then one time, 2 detectives were going out on a gambling arrest, and they needed help, and they needed a driver, really. So they asked me. So we went to Rockaway, far Rockaway, and it was in the wintertime. And I remember we went in, they had a warrant to arrest the place where they were doing bets over the phone. And we went in the door, broke down the door and everything. They arrested the guy, and I guess because I was a nuisance to them, they told me, stay here and watch in case, and answer the phones and take the bets. This way we'll do the business more harm. And I said, okay, I knew it was a way of getting rid of me. So I stayed there, and I'm answering the phone, doing the bets, just a few coming in. And I noticed outside a car pulls up, and a guy gets out, and he's looking all around. So I said, whoa, I hid in the closet. I said, something's happening. And he came upstairs, that guy. He went to the phones, and he started taking all the bets. So I watched him for about 20 minutes, and I opened the closet, and I scared the shit out of him. And I called up the 2 detectives, and I said, what am I going to do with this guy? He's here taking bets. And they couldn't believe it. And that was the beginning. I didn't have to go to the desk anymore. And I was with the field units, and it was great. And that was the beginning right there. That was just luck. They would try to dump me, but another stroke of luck, another guy came into work, and we made another arrest in the evening.
So what kind of, was that a typical thing? Was that like a sports bet type operation?
Yes, it was mostly sports betting.
And mostly phones. Like
they accommodate horses only as like a luxury, like just an accommodation.
Gotcha.
We were mostly sports betting.
How busy was it? What was that kind of?
Oh, very busy,
Yeah.
very busy. Sports betting is a big thing. Horse racing is active in certain areas. At that time, we didn't have OTB at that time. OTB came in a little bit later, which I was a part of, trying to stop it. During OTB, when it came in, I went on. After a few weeks, the big thing in New York was that time was OTB was going to knock out organized crime and gambling. After about a month, we had made quite a few arrests, and examination of the evidence showed it increased. So what I did is I typed up a paper for the chief, and it was and I didn't put any labels on it, and the chief had it. And I don't know what happened to this paper. The next day, it was in the front page of the Times. My whole story. I said, oh, geez, I'm finished now for sure. It's a white paper, no signature, written by Jerry Eskenazi of the New York Times. But that white paper showed that it would only increase. The bookmakers used the parlors, and eventually it went out of business. They overexpanded. There's no more OTB in New York. It's out of business as of last year.
Wow. Could you
So I
explain?
guess I was right there. Huh?
Could you explain what OTB is for our
Oh,
viewers?
off-track betting. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's
Off-track
right.
betting. Horses only.
Okay.
Horses only.
So you have to
New
go to
York,
the track normally
they-
to bet, but this way you could just bet on any track in the world or whatever, or
That's right.
in the region.
In the region there. We at one time we were into that. We had a post out at Aqueduct where we had a little house that had all machines in it that gave the telephone numbers of anybody around the area that would dial to try to place bets. And during that time, I saw the individuals that try to pass post. There was no phones allowed at the track, and one guy would stand up and put a big number up or have a code and put his hand up. That's one is the first horse winner, so they could pass post the bookmakers in New York. It was quite interesting just to watch them run the parking lot to get to where the guy that was near the phone, and he was BSing, and we were listening at the time because we had a court order to listen to this, and that was my learning of it, and it was really an awakening. It was good. It was enjoyable doing the gambling, and then they had also, which amazed me, up on the Cross Bay Boulevard, they had a couple of guys there that always sat with attaché cases full of money that would, if there was a race that was going lopsided, where everybody was betting on it, they would they would bet on other horses to bring it up so that if the payout was that good, nobody would get hurt and the mob wouldn't get hurt. That was taking the bets, to bring down the payout of the horse. Everybody's betting on this 40-1 shot, and all of a sudden the 40-1 shot is, if that payout's gonna be enormous. So they get into the track, put money into the pari-mutuel machine, and the 40-1 shot would slim right down to 10-1 with enough of betting on it. And that would in Vegas would be aware of it too.
So
Wasn't quite.
So were like the jockeys involved, or was it just all manipulation of the odds that was the hustle?
Yeah, we're not jockeys. It was just that it was that's what they just monitored. They have people monitor that today. If that's they have a group, a private group that does the monitoring of all sporting events and watching. The betting is what tells you if something's going wrong. But if it's organized, it's hard to discover.
Yeah.
Because they can do it in a way.
So when you were monitoring the calls, like was that an early form of wiretapping, or was that a different system?
No, it's the same system, except they just got fancier equipment and easier ways to do it. But the monitoring is the same. The equipment is electronically now. At that time, there was no the dialing was all manual. There was no.
So like when you discovered was it like when you discovered one of these phones that one of these guys was using, you would then record all the calls coming into that, or was there another?
No, we're just waiting for the outgoing call of the bet.
So you already knew those
incoming on minimization, incoming calls. If they had, these were coin boxes that were around the track.
Okay, gotcha.
So we didn't want it. We only wanted the ones that were illegal. We couldn't listen to the ones that weren't illegal.
Gotcha.
So if a guy came in and he's called and it looked like a professional store answered or business, we just hang up.
Gotcha.
Our phone. If he calls in and he says Jack for 32, oh, that's the number we want. Meaning he's Jack and 32 is the runner. And then he gives his bets in. That's the call we want.
Interesting.
We're not interested in any other calls.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, that's the way the codes worked on the betting. The first one was identifying the person betting, and the second one was his contact, the runner.
How soon after, like, how long
We're
after?
going to do one on gambling. I have all those things for you. I have all those facts for you there.
Yeah. I got to check those out. So like how quick after, how long did it last before, the guys on the other side were like, wait a second, they're on our calls, when did, like, it was just, that's the way it ran.
No, they never would do that. No, we would never, because we got it from the track, and how many people go to the track? Maybe 3 people called them, but they never found out that particular way as far they know it's somebody, but they felt somebody gave them up.
Yeah. Yeah. So then
You know,
then
like
they're all
the
paranoid of
OTB
their guys.
officer.
You know?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
It's kind of a double whammy.
that's it. Yeah, it is. They never suspected that we had these taps in. Some of them did. If it was the fancy bookmakers, they felt, oh, they must have a wire somewhere. In other words, you know, and we used to get a lot of good calls. We just say the Jewish bookmakers were the funniest because they would have if somebody was watching them, they would say, Frankie, Benny, and Izzy's around. And I would say, what the hell is that, Frank? That means the FBI. They call them Frank, Benny, and Izzy. And that was it. That was quite funny to us to figure it out. Well, who's Frankie, Benny, and Izzy? And we didn't know that group, and that's who it was.
I love that. I love that. So,
Yeah.
like, the other gambling stuff, was there like card rooms and that kind of stuff, or was it just all
Oh
sports
yeah,
betting?
card rooms. And we used to have. Our office was responsible for organized crime dice games. Dice games was organized by organized crime. It was definitely, we would go around and try to follow. There would be a lugger. That's the guy that drove them there. Or if the persons were part of the game, organized crime, they would go right to the game. But if the game was somewhere in the city, and it was a professional table that had tons of eats there for the people, and they would have like between 40 to 60 people gambling. And this would happen during the middle of the night. And this was a big thing with the police department to try to stop this. And we would watch them, and the logo would pick them up at like 49th and Broadway. That's where, if you wanted to play dice that night, you would get down to 49th and Broadway, and you wait there, and the logo would come along and take 6 or 7 people in his car, and his deal was not to be followed, and he was tough, very tough to follow the logo. He would go to New Jersey, and come back in the tunnel. Then maybe go out to Jersey again and come back in again before going to the location. But we were lucky once in a while. What our breakthrough came one time when we raided a dice game up and arrested a dice game up there. We had the table, we had all the chips and everything. They were booking the people. We were writing the arrest cards up, and we noticed the food was always delicious Italian cold cuts of every brand, the best bagels in town. And we found a receipt in McDonald's Avenue for the bakeries. Hey, this guy gets his bagels at McDonald's, on McDonald Avenue in Brooklyn. And we said, gee, we kept that receipt. And a week later, we decided to watch the bagel store in Brooklyn. And we watched the bagel store, and along comes a guy, gets like 4 dozen bagels, puts them in a car. So let's follow him. And there he was. He was the food guy for the dice games. He was easy to follow because he didn't know anybody was behind him. And he led us to a lot of great places. And they could never figure out how we got them so fast. We were following the bagel guy. And it was an interesting thing. It was really amazing. You didn't have to go through this. I mean, we used to follow them to Jersey and back, and in and out of traffic and Broadway. It was a mess. Fortunately, nobody got in an accident. This was a pleasure following the bagel man. And he would get the cold cuts too. He would have the cold cuts. He'd get them from 18th Avenue in Brooklyn. And he would go right to the game, and we would sit there and watch it. He would get there like 8:30, 9 o'clock, set the whole thing up. In comes the players around 11, 12, 1, and it's packed by 1:30 in the morning. It's packed. And that's the time we would always hit it, when it was packed.
And so would everyone like get arrested, or were you just kind of like looking for the top people?
Got arrested. During one of those games, like we got John Gotti in one of those games when he was a young loan shark. He was at the game. It was organized crime. It was definitely organized crime running it. I have to say, 40 people at the game. I would say 20 are part of the game. The other 20 are just contributing to the money, just putting the money in. It was well done. It was honestly done, by the way. Plus, the big thing at the game was the loan sharks. They were there, and they would lend you money if you needed more money at a high rate of interest, of course.
So they're like the ATMs.
That was, yeah.
With a serious service charge.
That's the only gambling I encountered in the only other gambling I ever came across. What was it? It was an FBI tech. He was an FBI guy that he was the Boston FBI tech, and he got transferred to the city, and He, well, I don't know how far can you tell? Oh, well, that's the truth. You know, I want to know, talk about him because it was an interesting case. He went to one of the local, the clubs in the, not clubs, one of the nice bars in Manhattan, where one of the bars where a CI worked in there. And this guy was, this particular agent was so, want to ingratiate himself much, he just kept bragging he was an FBI guy, and nobody believed him. And or the cop that was there got the information, he would send it down to headquarters. Headquarters would look at it and not pay attention. Then one day, the undercover cop up there says, "Hey, let me see your ID." So they gave him he gave the ID to the cop. He made a Xerox of it in the back. Then he gave it back to him. Then he sent down the ID to headquarters. The next thing we know, the chief is gone to Washington with the head of the FBI from New York. And we also, in the meantime, we said, oh, they're going to ruin our case because this guy's going to be a bonus to us. So we ran across the street and got a court order for a pen register in court. And we put the pen register on his home phone, which was in Manhattan. And we had to put the pen register on his home phone in a manner that he couldn't discover it because he parked his car right near where the terminal box was downstairs. So we had to take the whole thing apart and put it in the back and like weld it in a way. And so once they came back from Washington, the FBI thing was we're going to transfer him to the task force from Florida. But we had a pen register order, so they couldn't do it right away. But eventually they got him out of the way to transfer him, and they did transfer him. A year later, he comes back and he was arrested and thrown out of the FBI. But they didn't want us getting too close to the FBI. We had put a pen register on his desk phone at 69th Street, and World Trade? No, was he a desk? Yeah, desk set of 69th Street, and also his home, which was on 3rd Avenue, Manhattan. That was an interesting case, just trying to beat, and he got eventually. He was arrested, so I don't know what his sentence was, but that was a great. I thought it was a great case, and it was through the efforts of the narcotics court that helped us get the pen register orders.
What's a pen register?
Pen register is at that time before touch-tone dialing. The pen registers that give you the digits of the number dialed. It would like a teletype. We give or the printer from the Wall Street ticker tape, all digits, and it give you like if a guy dialed a 9, you get 9 dashes. There'd be a space for a 2 or a 1. That was before touch-tone. After that, when it became touch-tone, which we thought was the biggest thing in the world because we couldn't get the number anymore. But eventually, we got around that too.
So it's like basically like the rotary phones. It's like giving you a call log of the calls of the calls going out and coming in, or just going out because it's
incoming in would be a series of short dashes, and that was it to let us know it was an incoming. Outgoing it was a 9. It'd be 9 long dashes there on a thin piece of paper, a thin strip.
Yeah, let me just add that I've worked with John on this and not on installing an app, but on cases in the gold industry. We would look for the couriers. And a pen, correct me if I'm wrong, John, it was good for like 60 days, and you had to renew it and within the 60-day period to get it continue and do an affidavit why you need it. But it generated a lot of leads that, you would, instead of, following the target around and doing that, you would find where he was calling or she. And it was a great tool at the time.
Wow. But you have to like have some evidence come up in 60 days or else it won't get renewed kind of thing?
Yeah. Usually you had it very fast. It would come in and, creatures of habit, they're on the phone and you'd say, oh, this isn't we actually use these things called crisscross directories. Remember those, John? The crisscross, the big books? We had them in each group. And agents, you had to leave that book there because we were all working cases. And sometimes somebody calling sick and we couldn't find a book to use, so we had to go to another group. It was really ancient technology, but that would list the addresses and stuff. So what we were doing is trying to save time. And the unit at Customs, I'm jumping ahead, but that John worked in, they were doing all the electronic surveillance for the whole state a lot of the time and beyond. I'll let John continue with the Boston part. Go ahead.
No, the technical surveillance was definitely necessary. I didn't know if you wanted to go into that. We had a lot of great cases through technical surveillance. We worked with every agency. The DEA, we had the abortion bomber. We were able to track down and get in New York before he blew up another unit. And it was working with them was great. The ATF and all the other agencies, because nobody gave you a tough time. It was just trying to get the technical part done, and we always was able to get the technical part done. And it just was great.
Okay.
I don't know how far you.
No, discuss the cases. We
came up with the first ones to use tracking devices where we were able to put a gadget on a car and then you sit in the office and watch it where it goes. You know, that was a company came down and asked us to try it out for them. And we did. We put it on the car and we were able to sit in the office and have a map and see where the guy was going, so we didn't have to follow him. And it was a great invention. We did that for hijacking and everything.
What year, time frame was that?
This was in the 70s.
Wow.
Yeah, the 70s before. Yeah, it was in about the 70s. I'm not sure the time frame. About the 70s.
So you'd have like a map. Was it like a whole interface where because nothing was digital then, obviously.
On the screen, just like on the screen, like you have your tracking now to get it. Where do you want to go to a certain place? Your streets and everything. But you have a voice telling you. This would give us the street and follow the item. And a tracking device was put on with it was magnetic, and you could put it underneath the car at one time, and you could put it on without a court order, long as it wasn't in the driveway of the guy's home. If it was on a public place, you could go underneath and stick it on because you weren't violating anything. And then you would go home back to the office, call the office, and you just watch where the car went. You know, where you could watch it park and stop and everything. That was the beginning of it. That was the old method. I'm sure it's far more advanced now than ever. Okay, do it from the satellite.
Yeah, the GPS. But that was like, that must have.
That's exactly it was before the GPS.
That must have felt like James Bond technology back then.
It was amazing to give demonstrations of it because nobody could believe you could sit downtown in Manhattan and watch the guy drive around the city and where he was going.
That's wild.
And everybody was awed by it, and I was awed by it. And the company that came down was very generous. That developed it because they let us use it first, and it was exceptionally great. It was wonderful. Now I'm trying to go down the list here of trying to figure out I'm not sure of what kind of information you want with the IK. I'll tell you one quick story. This is like unusual things. Well, maybe it's against the FBI again, but that's all right. I don't mind that a bit. And we had an investigation going up in Andover, Mass. And it was the FBI. This one, I think you'll enjoy. This one was was on organized crime Lebanese. I think it was, I'm not sure of that, but my mind is slipping. But we went up there to meet with them one night in Boston. I was dragged out of Fort Lauderdale. I met with the FBI tech people, and they had a bug, which is a microphone inside a business in Boston. Well, not Boston, it was Andover. And I said, okay. We had an order to go in and put our own bug in too, which is kind of silly. But we had an order, but they said we had the order, and they said, okay, we're going to remove our bug. I said, don't do that. We won't touch the wires. I said, don't go in again. They said, oh no, we have to go in. I said, okay. We had a meeting that night. So the next day was a Saturday where I was meeting with an ATF guy, and he was the undercover. He was going to take us inside the office because he was dealing with the subject. And I was from the IRA, and I was going to be his communications guy as the undercover. So we met him in the morning. The snow had just finished, and we were driving to his office. And as we were going in the office, he opened the door and we went in. As we were walking to the office to go to his private office, I noticed a ladder all the way in the back. So, gee, and I said, oh, so the guy from the ATF, the guy that was working with the other officer, he went inside with him, and I said, give me a minute, I just want to check out back, because that was my job, to check for wires. I went back there, and here's the ladder up against the wall where their bug was, where they put the wires for the bug. And here that FBI, property of the FBI, Boston, written on the side.
What?
So I said, oh, geez. So I took the ladder, and I went out the back door, and I threw it in the snow. And then I came back in, and we did our job, and eventually we got our job for part of being the IRA was they were getting hash oil delivered, and we were going to get guns. That was the undercover with the ATF, but it was I couldn't believe it when I saw the lettering, and we threw it out, and we completed the case, and it was great. It was a good case, and the guys pled guilty. It was part of an organized crime thing. But during that investigation, which puzzled me more than anything, and I guess I never said it, we came up with a part there where we remember the American soldiers that were held prisoner, Anderson. They were held prisoners somewhere in I'm not sure where it was, but we found out they had the cells in Afghanistan underneath a gas station. Terry Anderson. It was him.
Journalist.
Okay. And so we submitted this information to Washington, D.C. and forgot about it. And a year later, I'm watching the film on television news, and there's our gas station, and they're taking them out of the cells at the bottom, which we reported a year before. So I'm saying, gee, we told them about that a year ago. How come they didn't do anything? It's one of those things. I'll probably get the hell beat out of me for that, but that was one of the things. It's great to get this stuff out. Let me tell you.
Oh, no, it's history. It's wonderful.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is history. It is history.
It is history.
That was the latter incident was the funniest thing that ever happened to me with that, and we covered it up. Nobody got involved. The whole case continued on away, and we were lucky. We were very lucky. Or I should say, Frankie, Benny, and Izzy was very lucky. But we got a lot of good things. We tried different things. We tried just interesting things that happened. I remember we were one night putting a tracking device on a boat in Pompano, Florida, and we had the police department watching across the canal in case something happened. He would if there was a run by the police, like a burglar or something, they would be able to stop it because they were watching us. It was 3 of us, and as we were there, the guy came out, and we were inside the boat he had a wire in the tracking device. There was 3 of us, and he stood up right on top of his dock, and we were all quiet, laying down. We all had dark clothes on, and he had a smoke, and he threw it away, and he went back in, and so we be able to install the tracking device and got the hell out of there. But the thing was, the officer that was assigned from the police department, he panicked. He was so upset that he was going to discover us, and he wanted to know what to do. He came to us at the end. He says, "What would you guys done if he found you?" And we said, "We would probably throw him in the water." What? What do you mean throw him? We're not going to get caught. He says, "Oh, good. I didn't know what to do if he came down there." It was a good series, a good era, and it was a lot of fun. And we try to do all the jobs that way. And it's interesting. I mean, there's tons of things I was on, and I'm trying to figure the right ones to do, the ones that you would enjoy, what people would enjoy. Well, there's a lot on bookmaking and how to move the wires around. That will wait as another day in gambling. You want to do one on gambling eventually.
Yes, we want that with you. Yeah.
Yeah, avoid that. And we had to install a mic in Niagara Falls. The guy
Niagara Falls.
They wouldn't use,
where would you put
Niagara
it?
Falls. Here's what we did. No, it was in a motel right outside Niagara Falls.
I was
The
gonna say,
motel was a horseshoe shape with about, I think, 30 rooms. And they used the first one on the right as you came in. Now, the purpose of this was not to use the telephone. The guy used to sit there every day and other people used to come and get messages. It was organized crime. So they gave us the job of putting a bug in there. So we got a room down the other end, and we were in that room and we're trying to figure how are we going to get in that room to put a bug in there without plus the owners might know. So we found a trap inside our linen closet, and the trap led underneath the motel, which was all sand. So we crawled down in the sand, and when we got to his hotel, we pushed open the trap, and out came a scale that they weigh the drugs on. So we knew we had the right room. So we took down the scale and we went up there and they used to sit in a room. There was wallpaper. We moved the wallpapers and we put the microphone there, back down, close up the trap, back to our motel room where the thing was, and they had great success with that. But that was one of the most interesting ones because we got to crawl maybe 20 yards in the sand on our belly to get to that motel and make sure we had the right room above us because all those are connected underneath. And it was an interesting thing, and that was like one of the good ones. And then one of the other ones that I remember outstanding was we used to get these Title IIIs, which is basically a wiretap, and we were working with our West Palm office in Customs, and the title they never had one before, and I was up there to instruct them and install it. So we got it signed on a Friday afternoon. And I went to the prosecutor and I said, when are we going to have minimization hearings? Meaning anybody that sits in a wire must be instructed by the U.S. Attorney's Office about when to listen and when not to listen. I talked to the prosecutor. It's Friday. What are we going to do? And I said, well, let's call the squad in and start the wiretap. And a lot of the cops were mad, but we called it in and they all came in. And it was about 5 o'clock, 5:15, and everybody was in the Fort Pierce office. And we're sitting there, and he's starting to describe it. And I put the machine down, plugged it in, and in comes a call. And the attorney says, okay, here it starts. Here's how it works. In comes call, and the call is about the boat arrived. It's down, it's on its way. It's a sailboat, and it's being towed with the drugs in it, up 95. We couldn't believe that. That was the purpose of the wiretap. So we had to they immediately left the room and they got the Florida Highway Patrol, and they were able to intercept to get the coke and the sailboat. Now that was the fastest wiretap ever. One call, and that was it. And it was over. Good thing we stayed. Otherwise, we would come the next day or on Saturday or Monday, and we say, "Oh boy, what happened? Somebody gave us up." We would be the worst. We would think the worst, and we got it. We're just lucky. Just they're giving instructions. The U.S. giving it, and then comes a call. It's yes, we got it. We're on our way, and that was it. Very few words, and the wiretap was over. The cheapest wiretap I think we ever installed because we didn't know overtime, no everything, no paperwork, and nothing.
So that's part of the cost of it is the monitoring, paying people to monitor it and sit there.
Oh yeah, overtime. You have to bring people in because you got to do sometimes 24 hours on it, so it's a big cost.
Yeah.
That's what you got to lay out all the plans for it and everything like that. And yeah, it is a big cost, but it's definitely worth it if you have the right people, the right subjects.
Right. So, what's the range on that transmission, the wiretap?
Talk about range. We had to put a microphone once in Washington D.C., a bug in an office, and we monitored in our office in New York. That was a gadget that one of the private companies made for me, and I was part of the installation in Washington D.C. In fact, it was the hardest installation because it was on a person that slept in the office. There was one of those buildings on DuPont that you could stay there, and it had a shower down the block. It had a half a cafeteria machines, but the guy lived there, so it was really tough for us. But he had one thing that he always played soccer every Wednesday, and he went at night in Virginia, would take the car, and we had to wait for him to leave before we could get up to his office and put the bug in. He had prostitutes would visit him. He would never leave this place. And it was a very interesting case but I'll never know the outcome because it all involved the CIA and everything like that. Like it was really unbelievable names. When we went in that office to put it in, there was the names of spies. So we were assisted them, but we monitored it in New York. I had set the wiring up, and we had a gadget that called a slave that would transmit that they called in from New York, and it opened the line right to them. And whenever he used the phone, they would do the minimization in New York. Nothing to do with the Washington office or anything like that. Right. And that was the first time it was ever done, and it worked out excellent.
So it was transmitting through the phone line.
Yeah, right through the phone line.
Wow.
Yeah, that was amazing. Imagine just dialing one number that opened the lines. It was like just like a relay system that was wide open.
Yeah.
It could be expensive if you used real telephone lines, but we used the government system, which was like what is that called? What would we call the government system?
FTS, John. FTS.
Yeah. Free telephone
service.
So it didn't cost, our budget was intact.
Yeah. Call
FTS,
grandma.
right.
Call grandma on Sunday. How you doing?
That was a very interesting one. First time ever done remotely, and we didn't have to have go look for any apartment down there or rent apartment, everything like that. We did it from the office in New York, and it was installing the bug took about. We did so much preliminary work on it. When we went in that night, when he left, by the way, when we were standing in the DuPont Hotel around the corner, waiting for him to leave for a soccer match, which he did every Wednesday or every Tuesday, and we met one of the reporters that was an anchor, and he saw us there, and we were going in the back door, and he was coming out the back door, and he looked at us, and he said, "Good luck, fellas." We said, "Thanks." I mean, I won't mention his name, but he was good. I don't know why he was coming out the back door of the hotel. And we were going in the back door, and we went down the block and installed it that night. I enjoyed that case because it was a challenge. It was a real challenge.
So I would assume that getting caught would be the thing you're worried about the most, right? When you're installing? No. Oh, you do precautions. You do your job. You do your homework. You won't get caught. So no one ever that on the boat. That was the closest call.
No one ever.
That was the close.
No,
or actually in the closet.
call.
The closet was the closest call, right?
Oh, no, that was different. I hid there on purpose. That had nothing to do with wiretapping or anything.
Yeah, gotcha.
I never got caught.
Yeah.
You never got caught. And because you got to plan this, you just can't jump out and do something.
Yeah. No, I was watching something, recently, and they were talking about wiretapping John Gotti's, like the Hunt and Fish Club or whatever it was called, and and there was
Bergen Fish Club.
Yeah, and they and there was like people walking around, and whoever they were talking to, it seemed like it was like a very close call. It was almost one of those things where they came within feet of him, and it was like had to have been terrifying.
Oh yeah, they were trying to figure out where he was giving the orders, and they thought they were trying to bug the club, but he was giving the orders from an apartment upstairs from some woman who left, who retired and moved out. That's where he used to hold his thing. That's where he had the big conversation about Granada, Sammy the Bull, and that's when they found out he turned on Sammy the Bull, and they just went and let Sammy the Bull hear this conversation, and he became their best informant ever. And that was the end of John Gotti.
Right,
he went against Sammy the Bull
because Sammy figured he was done, and so
he was. Oh yeah, he would. I mean, they were so close, and Sammy the Bull was his right-hand man, and he double-crossed him. He didn't like him. He was his ego.
Were you involved in that at that time, or
no, I wasn't involved in that. None of that, which was all right with me.
Yeah,
they did a good job on that. But Sammy the Bull was the one that when they turned him, that was the end of Gotti and all of them, and that was the best thing that happened. One of the interesting things I ran into that was one time we were following we call him like a Broadway bookmaker. I was assigned to follow him, and he'd come in by train, and he would go over by the New York Athletic Club in near Central Park, and he would sit there and he would do his pay and collects there. Now I noticed one day when I was following was a spring day, it was beautiful, and he met a couple of people that I didn't know who they are, but one guy I thought I recognized him, but I could never repeat his name because he looked like a person that was well known, but I just let it go. But I followed him later from then. He went to Ninty Moore's restaurant, which was on 47th Street, and you have to take an elevator up to Dinty Moore's on the 3rd floor. And so I followed him up in the elevator, and I looked inside the restaurant, went inside, and he's sitting down with 2 other people. One, I recognized one right away is Frank Costello, and the other one was an attorney. So I called up the chief, and I said, "Hey, chief, let me," I said, the bookmaker is sitting with, and he said, "Go in and arrest him." I said, "Okay, what for vagrancy?" Because they have no proof for jobs. At that time, there was a law on the books in New York where if you didn't have any gainful employment, you have to have some sort of gainful employment and have identification. And I announced myself, and I got Frank Costello and the bookmaker. So the only person that didn't have proof of employment was Frank Costello, but he had the most cash. So I arrested him for vagrancy. And this was a big thing. It was, I guess, a light day in the city for nothing going on. So I called the chief. I said, "I'm taking him down in the car to Manhattan Court." And when I got there, it was like Times Square with all the press. I said, "I can't get over this." And Costello was very cordial, and he went along with the procedure. And I got him down to the court, and then the boss brought another cop down from my office to help me. So you go in with the arraignment. He wanted me to hide because they didn't want me to be seen. So the cop went in with the arraignment, and I hid. But I talked to Frank, and on the way down, I was telling him about this was the times when there was a lot of like talks about the police department and corruption and gambling and everything like that. And I told Frank, I said, "Well, you're going to be interviewed and everything like that. If you want to go out the back way, I'll take you out the back way, whatever you want." He went into court. He had his like 3 attorneys came down, and they settled the case immediately at arraignment out. And so Frank is coming out, and I asked him, "If you want to go out, I'll take you out the back way." And he said, "No." So he went down in the elevator, and when he opened the elevator, all the press was there, and they asked him a question, and they talked about, one press guy was talking about betting in New York City. Isn't it terrible? And he said, "Wait a minute, let me tell you something. The way this police department's working, they're doing the best job in the world. We can't get a bet in outside of the track." And oh boy, we wanted good. And he looks over at me. "Was that okay, John?" So he was very cordial about that. But that was a very interesting time with him, Frank Costello. He was quite enjoyable just for that ride downtown and the arrest and everything like that at Ninty Moore's. He was the only one that got arrested of the 3 for vagrancy, because the others had their W-2 forms and everything with them.
So he was the boss then, right?
He was well, I don't know what he was then. I think
he was maybe coming up through the ranks pretty high.
I don't know if he was the boss.
Yeah.
He was up there, but I don't know what he was doing there. But he was very, very cordial about it, and it was interesting. And now it's just. And then another great thing that happened to me along the way, when I left the police department and I went to John Jay, and I just got a little tired of being at John Jay, and I was able to get into customs. My first week in customs, our new deputy commissioner gets a call that they want me at the trial of the commission trial that's going on over in New York. That was the big trial with the cement, where so much of 5% went to the families of every drop of cement that was laid in New York City. And so the guy, I remember our guy said, "Go ahead over there." I went over there, and then the FBI, in their pursuit of this investigation, decided to put wiretaps on a lot of gambling operations, and they accumulated quite a bit of evidence. So now the big defense was the lawyers, which was like 4 or 5 of them, and plus all the mob guys. The big defense was all this piece of paper, these papers were all gambling evidence. So my job was to go through. I spent almost a week down at the room going over all the work, all the information they seized, the paperwork, and then came the trial. So the trial was going on, and I remember walking in to go to the defendants were there. It was Fat Tony Salerno et al. So as I walked to take the seat of to testify, Fat Tony stands up and says, "Hey, you retired. You can't testify." He stands up in court and says this, which was a little bit of, everybody was laughing about that. And then I sat down, and what they did is, watching this trial go on, is they try to, and I took these pieces of paper and I proved to them that their pieces of paper was how much of every drop of cement, what percentage went to the 5 families. And it did, believe me. Every drop of cement that was put in New York City, 5% went to the 5 families, 1% to each family. And that was millions and millions of dollars with cement. And so we were able to convict them on that. It was because it was not gambling paper, but because they had boxes and boxes of evidence seized that they brought in, and I had to go through a lot of it. And I was on the stand for, I think, 2 days, day and a half. And it was, a lot of the lawyers were good. They were very smart lawyers. They knew their gambling, but I doing gambling too long not to be able to fool me. That they said this sheet of paper that they had this percentage of the cement went to the 5 families, and they got convicted. That was a very unusual, interesting case. I enjoyed that. But if I didn't like the week and stuck in the office going through all the bets, but that was part of the job, to be prepared. But it was a good time.
I got a quick
Come on,
question.
Toby, you want to know about what?
No, I want to ask you, this is kind of off the beat, but Dinty Moore's, is that Dinty Moore beef stew they sell in the stores?
No.
Okay, because I'm thinking, like, we used to have that in my house on like Fridays. If my dad had a bad week of sales, then we'd have Dinty Moore beef stew,
Yeah.
and that. But
it was a 5-star restaurant that was owned by a woman, and it was on the 3rd floor of right off, I think, 47th Street. But you had to go up, take the private elevator up to it.
Okay.
It was really like a class restaurant.
Okay.
And that's they had lunch there. We're having lunch there. It was crowded.
Okay. Yeah.
No, Dinty Moore's was the name of the restaurant. I don't even know if it still exists.
Huh. I have no idea.
It was, yeah, it was, and now another crazy thing we had one time was one of the groups down there somebody was getting the guns from the arsenal in Knoxville, Tennessee, and selling them to the bad guys and the druggies. And it happened to be a sergeant in the reserve. And they wanted to know what could we do about this? So what we did is we were able to go to Knoxville. We put up a camera. Well, I didn't know if this would work, but it did work. We put up a camera on where they would put the guns before they were sold. And we put the camera there, and we were able to monitor the camera in Miami, which was very interesting. It didn't produce that much, the camera, but it was an accomplishment to get it done. And because I remember when I went down to the Blue Ridge Mountains to put this camera in, the truck I borrowed ran off the road because I was looking at where the cable ran, and I rode down the hill about 100 yards, so I had to get it towed out. But I used my private AAA. So I didn't want to. But that night, when I was ready to go home, they asked me to go and check out this bar to see if this particular sergeant is there, because I don't know what they were doing. So I said, oh, gee. So it took me almost 25 minutes to find it at night up in the mountains. So I found the bar, and I remember parking, and it was a lot of these trucks there and everything. So I went in, and as I went in, everything stopped. It was packed. And I said, oh, geez. So I stood there in the doorway, and it was right by the bar it started. And the people were looking at me because I'm a stranger. I don't belong there. And I asked them, I said, do I have to leave or can I get a drink? And the bartender was like, come on in. And then everybody went back to their business. And sure enough, they asked me to look for them, and the sergeant was sitting in the back there with the people they wanted to know. They just wanted to identify him at that bar. But it was kind of strange when I went in there, everything stopped. And fortunately, you just got to be, oh my God. I wanted to leave, but the bartender wouldn't let me leave. and I was able to spot him. And I stayed a while, had a few drinks, then just left. And he was eventually arrested for selling the arms out of the armory, because he was in charge of the armory. He had like 30 years in the National Guard. So he was gone. That was one of the cases that Miami held. I'm sure you were aware of that case. Jerry Lang had that case.
Yeah, Gary, it was in Exodus. Yeah. Yeah, it was an Exodus case. I remember that one.
Yeah, it was an Exodus case.
You know what I
right.
do remember, John, is we had a gold. We were doing gold cases. I wasn't the case agent, but I had the undercover customs brokerage, and we had an agent working with a convicted felon who was an informant. He's since deceased, and the operation's taken down, which it lasted over 20 years. And it fell down due to corruption with an agent, with a lady who was his maid and accepting watches and all this. It's really sad, really pissed me off. And I actually saw him years later after he got out of jail. But anyway, this time I didn't do a lot of undercover like this. Mostly the Hispanic agents would do that, but it was my chance. I was like a money guy, coming in from Massachusetts, obviously, and we were meeting with somebody that was interested. So the agent who was working there was the broker. So John had wired up the place, so it was activated if we pushed a button, a concealed thing, and like a bank, when somebody came in. So I'm sitting there, and this guy comes in, and he says to me, he's nervous. And I said to him, "Oh, where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Massachusetts." He goes, "Me too. I went to Northeastern University. Where did you go?" And of course, that struck a bell. So I said, "Well, I kind of dropped out of Harvard, I said, but anybody that goes to Northeastern, there's a very high percentage chance they're a criminal justice major and a federal agent, because we had programs, co-op programs that would graduate. We know a bunch of people in customs that did that.
It's like a feeder.
Yeah. Right out of college, you get a job. It's great. So I look at him and I go, "Northeastern, huh? Okay." So we do the tape. We agree to another meeting later on. So I was able to get a yearbook about his approximate age and identified him. But what really struck me was he was the PIO person for the FBI, the public information officer. I knew I had seen him. So anyway, went up, talked to the FBI and said, "Look, I don't know what he says, "Well, one of the targets we had, they were looking at, they had seen him come there. It was like the cases were separate, customs and the FBI. But because of installing these devices, because what had happened was we had surveillance teams in the parking lot, FBI cars, customs cars. We didn't know each other. Everybody's armed. Now, there's these mechanisms now that when you do an operation like that, you're able to clear with, there's a clearinghouse for law enforcement, which tells you, anybody else working this, not the facts of the case, but just for safety. So for safety alone, I'm grateful to John Murray for putting that in and setting it up, because otherwise, it could have been disastrous, in that parking lot. So that's probably one of the things that we've seen. I've also seen John's work. John, do you remember you told me this story about the hat with the camera in it that they would use for a face-to-face? They use this to hand buy drugs and guns. It was great. The only problem is somebody leaked it to High Times magazine, and it was the end of that. But John, could you talk about some, I'm sure everybody'd be interested in the cases like the Wolf of Wall Street and Serpico and that group. Everybody's seen those movies.
Well, the Wolf of Wall Street really was Dave Marwell's case. I assisted Dave because I used to wire up the rooms for the hotels on Florida, and it was and it was nice to be able to go into the Fontainebleau and the harbor, the nice hotels like that, and wire them up for Dave. They did it such a long, tedious, good job on it. We never got caught, and everything went successful. It was a successful thing, the Wolf of Wall Street. And I take my hat off to Dave the way it was planned, and you were on that, Toby, too, with Dave quite a bit. And it was extremely interesting case to watch, and you sit back. But another crazy one we had, you want to know, was I was assigned to the Grand Cayman a couple of times to go with one group to put in, wire up people. One was they had was one of the detectives from the Grand Cayman couldn't arrest this group of people, and he didn't know how. So he told me where they were meeting out in the Grand Cayman, a certain spot where they sat around like a table, outdoor table, but they couldn't get these guys. So I went up there. Took him one day. He was a detective. He was a very nice detective assigned to Grand Cayman Police. He came. We went up there, and I looked around, and I took one of the pineapple coconut shells, and I brought it back to the hotel, and I was able to. I took it apart, and I put a kell in it. A kell is a device that is a microphone that is transmitted at so many hertz. So I put and then we went back that morning early, and we put the coconut with the rest of the coconuts that fell off the tree. And in comes the bad guys, and all the conversations what he heard. He was so excited, the detective. They were able to go in and arrest everybody there, and they had a big thing. And they put him in the local jail. But they were so happy there. I remember we used to go to their local bar, which was inside their compound at night, and they would celebrate about getting this particular guy. And the dogs. So they asked me now to go into the cells to put a microphone because they had some murder suspects. And, and so you line up to go into the cells, and the dogs are really. They accepted me, and the other prisoners were wondering why they accepted me. I wanted to put a microphone in one of the cells, but that didn't materialize because there was no place to really hide it. But it was amazing to work with them. So knowing the detectives down there, they asked me, listen, we have a cricket team, and we're trying to get uniforms for them, but they have no money. So I said, how much do you have? So I said, well, when I get back to the city, I'll go to a place in the Bronx, New York, and we'll find out. So when I got back, I went up to a uniform place in the Bronx, and the guy said he would do the 25. He'd give me 25 blazers with the imprint of the cricket team in it to go down at a dirt bottom price. So I called the detective there, and he said, okay, here's what we got to do. Now, how do we get him down there? They said, we can't pay the duty on this because it'll be more than the thing. So he got the Grand Cayman airline to meet down in the Miami airport to meet me. And I came in the back way. Fortunately, I was customs. I was able to get to with this big box of 25 sports jackets. And they put it on the Grand Cayman plane, and and the plane took off. And next thing I do, I got a picture of the 25 in a march into a big cricket meet out there with their uniforms. It was really, I enjoyed doing that. We got it done, and they were so happy to get their uniforms. The Grand Cayman Police, and that was a long time ago. Jeepers, I'm sorry, Toby, but it was interesting. Once these things come back to me, they ring bells, and it gets me nostalgia in a way. Yeah. I mean, I miss it. It's been many years ago. I mean, I've been around a long time. How old? Yeah, I'm going to be 87 next.
I was telling the other day, people that I've talked to, that's how you really tell the real cops is if you miss the job, and you miss it every day. One of my mentors said to me, he said, I miss this every day, I really do. And when you reconnect, I think one of our guests said, it's like 30 years have gone by in 10 minutes. You just reconnect with that person right away, and the stories are a little longer and they're a little more exciting than they were 30 years ago, but we all tend to to talk about that. I say it's like talking about a woman from 30 years ago. You know, oh, she was the most beautiful girl in the bar. Who knows what she looks like now? And vice versa for you ladies too. The guy that was there. You know, that's why people go to reunions.
Right,
You know,
right.
they don't go there to renew. They just want to see how everybody looks. You know, what happened to you over the years. So, and that. Can you touch on Serpico a little bit? Any experience that you had? Now I'm really dating you. Now I'm dating you, John Murray.
I know. I had one experience with Serpico. The chief of the Public Morals Division asked me to go with Serpico to this place on 116th Street where they're taking policy bets. Now, I met Frank and we went up in one car. I drove, and Frank he did not look like a cop. He was had a long beard. He had an overcoat because it was wintertime. And we went up there and we were on 116th Street. We were watching the people, going in a certain store. And I said, okay, Frank, there's your place to go bet. And he kept saying that he'd be getting made. He'd get made. So, oh boy. I mean, I was really upset. Get made. I said, oh, jeepers. So I said, okay, after about a half hour, I said, well, if you think you're going to get made, let's call it off. So I took him back to headquarters and I went in to see the chief. I said, don't you ever put me out with him again, because he would not do the job. He said he'd get made, and it was perfectly right way to do it. And I was furious to waste the time because we had a chance to arrest these people. And Frank was the only one he could have got in and out of anywhere the way he operated. But that was the only time I worked with Serpico, and that was it. I was very disappointed, and he was so fearful of doing the job. So that's a shame. Another one I had a great thing with the smuggling group. When I first arrived there from the police department, they had a group out where they had a cleaners on Atlantic Avenue where they kept their frogman suits. And what happened when the ship came in, which was the docking was only about 2 blocks away, it would tie up one of the big shippings, one of the commercial ships. And at the bottom of the ship is an enclosed cabinet under the water. And that cabinet, they found out that cabinet, they would put the drugs in there. So, but you could search the whole ship, but you could never search out unless you went under the water. So the smuggling group got wind of this and they wanted to know it. So we put a wiretap in that particular dry cleaners where they would go and get their uniforms and go down to the water. So one night I was going down there because the wire broke and they couldn't hear anymore. So I said, uh-oh, something's wrong. And I just went from the New York City into customs. And I said, oh, gee, I'll go out and get it. And I remember I had to call in sector and tell him. He said, what do you mean? Nobody does that here in customs. I said, well, I got to fix that wire. And I went, and he said, okay. I went down there and I had to go around the corner on Atlantic Avenue, go down a stairway to the backyards. And as I was doing that, and this is like maybe 9 or 10 o'clock at night, winter night, there was a guy attacking a woman. And then of course I stopped that, and the woman no prosecution, because he didn't get any far, and we a couple of clobbers, and on the way he went, and we went about our business, and the woman thanked me. Well, that particular incident was one of the incidences we used for people that were equipment specialists in customs to carry guns, because that's where I was. I was all alone going down a backyard in Brooklyn. Well, we did correct it, and we found out, and we watched the frogman go down and take it out, and they made a great case in that they did store the drugs there. The night we put the wire in, out comes, then the next thing you know, it revealed that the ship arrived, go get the drugs. So they watched them. These guys came, got their frogman uniform. They drove them a block down to the pier. They got out. They went in the water, the two of them, out to the cargo ship. Underneath by the propeller, there's a door, and that's where the drugs were, and they made a successful seizure. And that was an interesting one because I was only just came to customs about 2 days before, and it was nice to be able to see the smuggling group succeed in that. It was crazy because of the guy attacking the woman. Unfortunately, and I'm so happy I was able to be there at that time. And we couldn't believe it. Here is, just got here, and I'm this going down the cellar, walking down the long stairs. Oh, and there it is, and everything ended well, and they got a good arrest, and the woman was pleased and happy, and everybody went home. That was an unusual one. And we had one time putting in the microphone was strange. It was in the East 80s. They got a bug order for a narcotics operation. The DEA got the order, and they ran into a little stumbling block. They gave me the order to install the microphone. So the DEA was able to have great connections with the phone company, and they put the guy's phone out of service. So he had a call for service. And so they established, and I was going to be the service person to put in the mic. So I arrived at the apartment, I think 2L at 80, and the woman let me in. She was scantily clad, and a woman let me in, and I went in there, and I'm saying, where is and there is, the guy cut a hole in the ceiling, and he had the second floor apartments besides the first floor. And he had his own stairway going up, and he's up there yelling that he had a terrible back pain, that he couldn't come down. Now we have a court order to put a bug in where he is, but he's not there. He's going to be upstairs. I said, oh, what the hell do we do now? So I remember backing out and talking to the DEA guy, and I said, we got to do something about this. And he said, okay. He said, what do we do? So I said, I come up with an idea. Get me a long wire. So I went there and I talked to the girl, and she was following me like anything. She was suspicious. The guy was a known narcotics dealer. I went up the steps and talked to him and said about his back was killing him. And I explained to him, I said, listen, he said, I need the phone working. I said, okay. I said, I'll make sure that you don't have to go down to get it. How about if I give you a long extension? He thought that was great. So I took the extension, I installed it downstairs where the court order said. And I put it on the phone, and I gave him a long wire, but I didn't touch it then. And the girl brought it up to him and brought up the bug up the steps and gave him the bug. And we went about, and when they got him, he got 40 years in jail. That's I remember that. But we didn't violate the order. I installed it in the apartment the order said. I didn't move it. They took the phone and dragged it upstairs. I remember they got me a big long wire, and I attached it to the phone for him. And he wanted to give me a tip and everything for giving him the phone. And because he was up one flight up. It was amazing. When I walked to that apartment and saw how this guy went through concrete. Well, he was very, very successful narcotics dealer. And they had that spiral staircase coming right down.
Probably be good at getting out of prison, right? With those skills.
Yeah. He got 40 years. Wow. And he had an unusual name, but I don't want to, he's well known in the area up there. He's a real bad dealer. So, and that was an interesting one, and it was a good one. I enjoyed going up there. But I remember handing her the phone, and he's thanking me very much. But I wasn't going to give him the phone because that would be a violation of the order. I installed it in the apartment where the order said. What she did with it, I didn't know. And she right up the stairs as I was leaving to give him the phone, and then he did all his calls from there. But that phone was installed in the apartment we had the court order for, and it was successful. The lawyers liked it and everything.
Well, as a service tech, as a telephone guy, you really went above and beyond to make sure he could access that phone.
You never know what you're going to do. You got to go. Yeah. You got to go above and beyond every case.
I'm here from the government. I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's the nicest phone guy ever.
Yeah. But you got to play. You got to turn yourself right into that as you do it.
Yeah.
You got to take 5 minutes out to change your attitude and have your attitude one way and not be suspicious looking or look around. You got to be one, and that's the way you got to train yourself. And it's a little bit of acting, but it was necessary.
Yeah, that seems just as undercover to me as any of the other undercover type things. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's not just going out and buying drugs and everything like that. But it was an interesting thing with him. And he got 40 years. He was a big drug dealer, and I didn't know it. We had that case too with another one up in the Bronx. where one of the wires, where the DEA was working it, and the wire broke, and we had a wire there too, and I had to go down a certain yard that had a German Shepherd that was as mean as hell, and I knew I could never get into that basement. So I spent about, whenever time I went out, and I went out for about a week, and about 6 or 7 times I would stop by and give him a cold cut, this German Shepherd. I told him something to eat, all the time. So then came the time that I had to go in now to see why this wire wasn't working. And it was, and so now with the day that I picked that morning, I did it in the morning, figured it was a safe time. The bad guys are still sleeping. I remember going down the stairs to the back, and out comes a guy with a machine gun around this, a machine gun. Holy shit. So I just said, telephone, I'm going to do my business. And he looked at me, and I had all the proper stuff, and he went about his business. Because he didn't care, because he said the dog would know. The dog saw me, and the tail was going a mile a minute.
Breakfast.
He couldn't. So the guy was very suspicious then. I said, well, maybe he don't like black people. Maybe he just likes white people. And he said, that must be it. So the dog let me in. The dog wouldn't let him in, but the dog let me in. And it was a good case for the DEA to fix that wire. And it was called Black Friday. It was a big arrest on their part. And I thought that was great. But the dog was unbelievable. You know, there was one time before, I should have said that first, where I had to go down there to see if it was all right. And I was going down, and he wasn't around. I said, oh, shucks, the poor dog, I don't know where he is. So I went to do my little thing in the box. Next thing you notice, my shoulder, there's a paw. And there he is. He come up to say hello to me. And I had his food for him, too. I used to buy bologna for him. One time I gave him turkey. I wanted to get him a good, roast beef was the day when I went in. I brought roast beef with me. And he was my friend. He would stay right with me while I did my wiring in the basement. He protected me.
You should have brought him filet mignon after the guy with the machine gun.
He was such a nice dog. I mean, he was ferocious when I first met him, and I would love to have taken him home, but I wouldn't. But he was a nice animal, and I wasn't afraid of him. After a while, he was just my buddy. He would sit there with me inside the cellar. It was nice to have company. You know, it was just unbelievable. We had many things like that. With Haida was a big thing when we got Haida. Haida was a high intensity drug trafficking area, and they gave us the budget, and we set up a special room in Florida for the monitoring team, which turned out pretty good. Toby, you've been in that room, and we're very proud to do that.
No, that was good. I wonder if we can talk about the National Hockey League a little bit.
Oh, sure.
I love that. I know you do. It was my pleasure, like I said before, working with him for a year. It was we had really, really good times. He knew where the good coffee was in the arena, so that made it good. That's very important to me, especially in between periods, you know, when there was a lot of activities. But John, could you explain to the viewers what I talked to Sean O'Connor. He's going to come on, and he's going to talk about club management and on that side. And Emilio's going to come on and talk about his experiences with the New Jersey State Police. So we have quite a people, but Sean was the security manager for the Panthers. John, like I said, was actually the most senior representative of the National Hockey League assigned to any team, and did it for over 30 years, did it 30 years. And, Emilio is here now. He's come from New Jersey to Florida. So it was a great fit. Sometimes you go into jobs and, you got to know the people. We bonded instantly. And last year we had the privilege of the All-Star game, which was held there, a special event, and went to the finals with the playoffs. So it was a real good experience for me personally. So, John, can you explain what the role of the NHL representative is as far as with the National Hockey League?
Absolutely, would be fun. I was fortunate to get this job when the Panthers was created back in 19, forget the date, but it was 30 years ago. And the head of it was Dennis Cunningham, who was the head of the NHL security. And he immediately called me up because he knew I was a hockey buff. Ever since when I was assigned as a cop in New York, we would go up to Madison Square Garden quite a bit. And he called up and I became the hockey rep. The hockey rep was a person responsible for the personnel of the NHL. And any kind of trouble or problems they would have, or any kind of scandalous thing, we would step in. The first team to come down was, I remember the first assignment I had was meeting like Ron Niedermeyer, taking him to Brian Benning's house. That was one of the big assignments, and they worked and they
First
opened
draft
up the rink.
pick, yeah.
Yeah, their first draft pick was Rob Niedermeyer, and so he was, and we had the rink was the Glacier Rink in Pompano, which was an old time rink, and the Panthers, that was their camp. They got that before they moved to Coral Springs to the ice stand. But they played there for the first couple of years. I got to meet all the Panthers was like an expansion team, so they threw together a lot of players that were over the hill, too young. Some teams didn't want them, and they became a great team. And knowing them and getting to know them was amazing. They are the greatest bunch of people, and they were a little bit wild because they were brand new, but they were wonderful. They all ate together and they all worked together. And there's a lot of little things happen, but we don't want to mention that. We don't want to damage them or let their wives know or anything like that. We used to have a lot of, when it started, they had a lot of people following them. They used to have down at the grounds, women used to come and wait there for them to come out, and I would go over. Some of the players like that, but I would go over and talk to the girl after seeing her a few times and tell, hey, you don't want to hang out with him. I think he has AIDS. And boom, they'd be gone. And the player would come out. The player would come out and look around. Well, I was supposed to meet someone here, John. Oh, I think she left. She didn't want to see anymore. I was just doing that because I got to know them and their families, and they were the greatest bunch of guys in the world. And it went on, and they did a great thing. In their second year, they went all the way to the finals, and they lost in the finals. But that was a brand new team, and they got to know their families because everybody moved. I lived in a place in Waterside in Florida, and this had a hot tub. But so the Panther players all lived in that area at that time because they would drive to Compa. So I would leave the gate open so they can come in if they had to use a hot tub, and they go into the hot tub in our development. Because otherwise you have to have passes for the gate and everything like that. And that was with the knowing them and got to know their families. They're the greatest bunch of people in the world, and the honest people, and they're unbelievable compared to any sport. I was in Major League Baseball for quite a while too, and it was I still enjoy the hockey players more than ever. And now I watched them grow. I went through 30 years with them, and they changed management last year. And it's lucky because they have good people in charge now, and he's excellent to run the show. And he took my place, and I'm happy. And I've been at one game so far. I intend to attend some more games.
What are the responsibilities? I think that's what everybody wants to know. Like with the referees, I know them, but you were there from the beginning.
Right. The security was the primary target was the visiting team and the referees. That was your ones that you really had to be concerned about. The home team, they're at home. They're not going to have many enemies or people that don't like them there. It was the referees who, of course, the referees they'd get in trouble, or they would be hurt if somebody was like the fans didn't like them if it was a bad call. And then they didn't like the player if it was a bad call too. They would be yelling and screaming at hey, the ref sucks, this, and so that's who you had to watch out for. Make sure they arrive safely, make sure they leave safely. They had the referees and the visiting team was on one side, so that's where you devoted most of your attention. The officials, the referees and the officials were a great bunch of people, but they were always, no call always is right. Then the teams that would want to come down and The managers talked to the refs. Why'd they make that call? But they weren't allowed in the room. If they ever walked into that room without checking with me first, they get a $10,000 fine. So that's how would they protect the referee, the National Hockey League. But no one ever did it. And it was they had one coach that was kind of on Philadelphia that was kind of pushy and get in, but we let him go. And then there was another coach in Toronto who he wanted to challenge me to a fight, and I said, "Nah, get out." And so we got along well, and it was great to watch. These guys are the salt of the earth. They are really good people. I enjoyed seeing all of them break in, the rookies and everything, especially in the beginning where they were a little bit wild because it's Florida. There was they would unfortunately get involved in strip joints, but everything went out good. And today, they're absolutely 100%. There's less work to do, and watch them now. It was really amazing. We had a couple of incidents with them, and when they were younger, and everything was worked out perfectly. And that was my greatest 30 years working with the NHL. I enjoyed it tremendously. And Dennis Cunningham was the tops, and it was good. It was great. They were just a nice bunch of people. What a great place to go is down to the rink and have the people there and working and make sure everything is running right. I can't say enough about that. I wish I was still there.
Yeah.
But that was you got to move on.
Yeah, it was a well-oiled machine, John. And everybody knew their jobs. The security people there got along. Even the fans, occasionally you'd have to talk to them, because they get upset with referees. And it was a great experience to see behind the scenes and some of the stuff that the players goofing around, especially at the All-Star game, because everybody was loose and everybody had fun.
Yeah, that's right.
But no,
they all played before the game. Remember the warm-ups was watching
soccer.
The teams.
Indoor soccer
was how they would warm themselves up.
Yeah.
They would play soccer
in the hallway.
in that little
it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and they would be really. That's where you saw a different side of them compared to on the ice, and it was really refreshing.
Oh yeah, I think the best thing about the NHL is they make them dress, put a coat on, and leave. They don't go out in sweats. They get on the visiting team bus and coat and tie. You don't see that anymore in professional sports. Usually, I think hockey's the only sport that still does that. Where they have to show up like that and leave like that. So, and that. So it's interesting. Well, go ahead.
The fans were interesting too, we had a fan one time. This is worth mentioning in Miami when they were playing in Miami. This kid had like a palsy thing. He was in his 30s, and he always had a guide with him. I always saw him there, and he was a nice kid. And he told me he got permission one day. He said I felt so bad for him. He was always crumpled up, and he said if I could please get him to meet Mario Lemieux. I said, "Oh, jeepers!" I said, I don't think they allow that. I said, "But okay." I said, "Come to practice before the game." He came with his helper, and he was out waiting there at practice, and Lemieux came off the ice from his practice, and he gave him a stick, and he talked to him. Well, this kid was cured. He straightened up, and he spoke. Well, I just couldn't believe it. I watched this in complete amazement, and he got so overcome with it that he was absolutely didn't have any symptoms whatsoever. And then Lemieux was so good to him and talked to him and everything. And this kid that had to take him home, he got so emotional. And it was so nice to see the way the hockey players stopped, talked to him, and what he did for that 5 minutes for that kid was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. How he straightened up from this all crawled. He was all like punched up like this, and he was so happy. And he left with a stick signed by Mario. And it was I take my hat off to that man for doing that.
Oh yeah, the players are really nice.
The hockey players.
So typical, yes, in the way they talk to the fans and everything like that. So, yeah. Well, let's leave this on a great note like that, John. we're going to have you back on the gambling, because I think that's something that, and we'll talk about now that gambling's been opened up to professional sports. What are the drawbacks and what we have to be aware of to see which might happen, as far as the betting, as they put the odds on the screen while the game's going on. And you wonder if the players will hopefully not get involved in that. But, with big money on the table, you never know. Like with boxing, it's the same. It was the same way. There's big purses on the table. They bet, will there be a draw, knockdown in the second round? It's become so, even the singing of the national anthem, how long it'll be, and you've pointed that out to me, and I'm like, I never thought of that.
Yeah, the Super Bowl prop bets,
Yeah,
it's like...
I mean, it's there, and I hopefully it won't lead to a big scandal, but if it does, it may take down sports as we know it, and I want you to give your opinion on it, because you've been in the sports industry and you've also been in the law enforcement industry, and what your feelings are. And we're going to have an individual who was involved in gambling and went to jail and now talks about it on an upcoming podcast. And I think it would be good.
The gambling, I've been doing research on it since you told me that would be one of the subjects. And what surprised me, I went over to all the things with the CCNY scandal way back in the 50s, where it started with basketball. That was one of the big scandals first. And then they had other little scandals and other big scandals with the referees after. But it's amazing what I discovered in looking at this, all the gambling and all the people that the advertisement and the betting comes right across on during intermission, or they're taking a break now from a period or commercial. There's the gambling, bet this. That's the cheapest. I'm shocked at it. But now, there's one group who was monitoring the gambling, and I told Toby, you'll never guess who. He could never guess it, and I have the report on it. The UN. Can you imagine that? The UN is monitoring the betting of the gambling in gambling in the United States. So that I have prepared, ready to go, and tell you what they're going to do, what they want to do. But I was shocked when I found the UN involved in it. Now, what do you think of that, Jeff? Could you think of the UN would ever be involved in monitoring the gambling?
Well, I guess now everyone can gamble on their phones, so it needs to be some sort of not national, oversight. But you could be in any country and gamble on your phone real time, So yeah, it would have to be something above any one country. I would assume. But I don't know. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the information.
Yeah, I was shocked myself. I was reading like I was a brand new rookie. I said, the UN. I said, wait a minute. This page is wrong. And sure enough, there it is. I'm reading all what their plan is, what their outline is, and the grand. Oh, I said, gee, this is amazing. So there's people way in the back there are concerned about. It's one of those things. Houston, we got a problem. There's going to be terrible scandals down because there's so much money involved in it. And I just hope some sport, somebody.
Let's hope they don't bet on how many teeth players lose on the ice.
Yeah, they do.
That would be.
Because I was doing Major League Baseball. I was doing the AAA teams and things like that. And one of the things this is many years ago, one of the things that came to me was this one kid came to me one day at the AAA game, and he said, and he's a pitcher, but he says he wants to talk to me. I said, what's the matter? He says, this guy here wants to give me a car and help me, and we were warned to talk to you if anything. I said, well, what was it? What happened is he was a checker in the Publix, but he didn't earn enough, and this was an organized crime guy grooming this kid that's going to be an official in baseball. And I told him, don't take the car, and I got him away from him, and he thanked me very much. Just cut your ties with him, because he was grooming this kid to be part of to control him. And it's just, I couldn't believe it, and how they exactly reach back into the minor leagues before he's even a referee or an official in the AAA. So you got to watch anything to get the edge. anything to get the edge in.
Well, that'll be I'm sure, an interesting. I know it will be. People will watch that because it's coming. It's coming, and it's like you said. There's going to be the good, bad, and the ugly with that. So
That's that's the way to put it. And I hope it don't happen. But too much money's involved, Toby.
no, I
Too
know.
much money's involved in it
It's all about the
for an
business
outcome.
now.
It's like the Goodfellas. Remember the Goodfellas did? Remember Henry Hill was in jail in Philadelphia, and he was jailed with Coon, and his brother played for Boston College.
Yeah, this scandal up in Northeast.
Yeah, the scandal. Yeah, and that was part of Goodfellas. And
Shaving.
he was able to convince them. He was able to convince 3 players. You're not going to make the NBA. Take this $10,000 and just shave the point. Don't lose the game. And that was a big thing. That was a part of Goodfellas, the movie. And that's all I'm trying to tell them here. Just don't lose. You're not going to hurt the school. Just take the money. And they took the money. And that way they got arrested for that. And Kuhn and I forget the other kid's name. And so that's what the deal is. You can make an astronomical amount of money and still not lose. Just shave that. It's just the line that counts. What is the line? It's not who wins or loses. It's the spread. That's it. It's not who wins or loses anymore. It's the spread, and that's what controls all gambling now. If you want to know, like you usually bet, I bet you this wins, that wins. I bet you $1 here, $1. No, it's the spread that counts. What is the spread? Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped off the subject.
No. That is the subject.
It's foreshadowing the next
We're going to
one.
get
That's good.
to the next one with that. But I wanted to thank you and pleasure for coming on and your perspectives on the technology and your career, which is tremendous, and also the gambling and talking about that briefly today and a future show. And I don't have anything else. Jeff, are you?
No, I think this was a great session, and looking forward to the next one. It's great meeting you, John.